there's all these questions of what did the dollars do? And I think that's part of the magic of what you all are doing also, is being able to instrument what has never been truly measurable. When we talk about full funnel and measurement, there's never been a lack of want to have it. It's been a lack of ability to deliver on that measurement and instrumentation. Let's put a 5-year prediction out there that you'll be able to do direct purchase in LinkedIn.
Scott, welcome. Very excited to have you on board on this podcast. We'll be talking about Influence Evolved, Later's full funnel approach to brand and sales. Scott, if you could do just a quick intro of your name, full name, role, company, and I'll give a bit more color to that as well.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Max, for having me. I'm Scott Sutton. I'm the CEO of Later. Later is the top influencer marketing and social media platform, kind of bringing together all the different elements of the creator economy. So yeah, it's a fun time to be in the space.
Wicked. Today we're going to talk a bit about how Later is moving from social to full funnel influencer and social, and how together Later and ThisThat are making influencer more measurable, strategic, and outcome driven. We'll have 4 parts. We'll go into why Later is doubling down on influencer. From CPM or ROAS to full funnel, making influencer more predictable, strategic, and outcome driven, and then 1 + 1 = 3, when brand and performance come together, having outsized returns. We'll also have a little fun rapid fire this or that questions at the end.
Let's do it.
So Scott, starting off the beginning, you are a transformational SaaS executive. You scaled ZoomInfo's revenues from 150 million to $1 billion, a business intelligence SaaS offering for go-to-market teams where you led 10 acquisitions and an IPO. And now you're unifying the creator economy under the Later brand. Later is moving from social to full funnel influencer and social. So I'd like to start with why now? Why is influencer marketing a serious bet for Later? What's changed in the market that makes this the moment? When we spoke before, your team said that people are the new brands. I'm curious as to how that insight might shape your thesis. But just before we go into that, a bit of context, if you could please give for the audience, provide some history in Maverick, Later, Mavely, how they all came together, and what makes Later uniquely positioned now to bring all this together for this time and this moment.
Awesome. Yeah, I think it's no surprise to anyone right now that creators are driving so much of media, so much of the engagement with audiences who are buying and discovering new products. And in concert with my experience and what I was brought in to help do was to understand, how do we get the most out of this opportunity that's transformational? And we look at it, we think about it as a multi-decade trend or phenomenon. Like when TV or cable TV came about, as internet advertising came about, these are multi-decade trends. And so everyone's trying to take a particular slice and piece of the creator economy. You have people who are going in the subscription kind of Patreon style. You have people who are agencies or software players. You have affiliate. You have social media management, social listening. There's all these dimensions to social. And what we said we needed to do was understand which pieces of those have relevant data, performance understanding, the key componentry to make creators successful, to help brands grow, leveraging this kind of creator ecosystem. And so we looked around and we said, what are the philosophical and fundamental things you need to do to win in the creator economy and understand it? And it came down to, I think about it as like 5 core elements. And one was around social media management. You need to understand what works on social. And Later, which is formerly LaterGram, has this 10-year history, 300+ million posts of seeing what works on social, being able to break down all the performance, all the engagements, all the comments, all of the click activity. And so that's kind of one core element, is what works on social. And so Later was originally LaterGram, founded on this publishing of content, managing of social media. Another element of it is on the influencer side, and needing to be able to understand what creators are great at driving what types of engagement for what types of products. Maverick was born out of that, and it was really influencer marketing software, but then also services to help liaison with clients So that was Maverick. And so those kind of pieces we brought together, and it was this merging of data, this merging of an understanding of what works on social broadly, but then what works as paid content. There's this whole other element that we started to see emerge, which is all of the purchase and sale around the affiliate technology and driving sales. And so earlier this year, we bought a company called Mavely, and they have 120,000 creators driving $2 billion in GMV. And part of the magic of that is they can see every single transaction, every single SKU that was part of the cart, what piece of content drove it, what creator drove it. And it comes back again to this thesis of understanding deeply with data what works on social in all these different dimensions of social, kind of influencer software, influencer agency, link in bio, affiliate and creator networks. So that's what we're bringing together. It's a really interesting time as this stuff all comes together.
When you describe it in different eras, there's a way in which we look at things I like your perspective on, and maybe you have a similar thesis on this. I describe often to the team that we've got 3 different eras of marketing and that we've now entered into the third one, or in this transition to this third one. I call them mass media, personalization era, and community era. The mass media is, think back to the 1920s all the way to the 1990s. Think of a speakerphone trying to reach as many people as possible. The currency in that era is reach. Mm-hmm. Then you get the internet. You can have a very specific creative reaching a very specific audience. At that point, the currency becomes effectiveness, and everyone's trying to optimize for the most effective way of marketing. That's the personalization era. Moving into the community era, people are beginning to become, this is now more 2020s, 2030s, we're in this transition of this. Influence marketing going mainstream, and that rise has definitely changed this. People are becoming more apathetic towards effective ads. Mm-hmm. They're leaning on their peers more, and the closest to that in an advertising format would be an influencer. But when you're looking at the currency in that, we see that as influence. And the way in which we would describe influence is both effective advertising, but also that ripple effect, the ability to change behaviors. And I liked how you described that there are different components in which we could show up in that. How does that sort of sit? Does that speak a similar language to how you might describe that?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think it describes well a macro change of kind of this move from early advertising, which was just kind of shouting at you, telling you a story, but there's no two-way feedback loop, and then there's less engagement. And what's interesting is there's always been influencers. If you think about the history of Hermes, you have the Kelly bag, which is from Grace Kelly. You have the Birkin bag, which was inspired by I need a diaper bag, and it was like a run-in from Hermes on an airplane, and this bag was created. And then the Hermes scarf was popularized by Queen Elizabeth, and she wore it, and everyone needed to have a scarf. Yeah. I think what you have today is this democratization of distribution, of access to individuals with social media. And so I 100% think that kind of macro trend is happening. What's interesting is the micro trend underneath the history of advertising, and I love that you're kind of a historian of it, because I think it matters a lot. Early days, you had like print media and the newspaper, and when that came out, it was you're shouting to people. There's very little feedback loops, and the way you target is pick the publication where the audience is the geolocation or the topical interest. Magazines got even more refined, and it was slicing audiences, but still no two-way feedback loop. You get radio, again, slicing audiences. And then what was magical is when you start to get to some of these new channels, like as the internet emerged, is you started to have measurement and two-way feedback loops. TV, there was some measurement, but very, very limited. And where I see this micro cycle with influencers, it was just effective out of the gate. The ROI was just, it happened because you were the first into the space. But then the space gets crowded, everyone's vying for attention, influencer rates go up, and now everyone is trying to drive this into a performance channel. And it's this natural like micro evolution. If you're Gary Vee talks a lot about being on Google search and having the wine keyword first. And he was like, dirt cheap, I owned it, and it just grew my business, and I didn't even have to think about ROI because I was the first in. And then it got crowded, and everyone has to try to instrument and measure the ROI. And I think a lot of that's happening in the creator space. How do you optimize outcomes as this channel develops, matures, everyone rushes into the space? And that's these little microcycles for each new advertising methodology that comes out.
I love that perspective. That brings us like quite neatly actually to the part two, moving from CPM or ROAS to full funnel. Oh, but even just you get my mind going. I was talking with Rory Sutherland not long ago, and he's from the vice chairman of Ogilvy, and a big topic that he's bringing up more and more as of recent is that 10% of your marketing has the outsized returns that does everything else for you. Similar to almost like a VC model. He's trying to push that you should be thinking about marketing in that sense. And if you are measuring things, it's probably the standardized approach that everyone else is doing. And you almost want to facilitate environments in which marketers can do the illogical and do the crazy things that then would bring those outsized returns. Is that kind of what you're touching on with those micro economies, micro things that are happening underneath of these constant new ways? Like you've got TikTok Shop that was becoming a thing. You've got different elements of commerce. Is that what you're meaning with that, or?
Yeah, I think there's a maturation of each different channel. So what's interesting on the TikTok Shop piece, and there's this whole growing movement of social commerce. The wild thing is, if you want to understand, and I love that we keep talking about history, because again, I think if you're not a student of what's happened, you're missing out on a huge ability to predict what's going to happen. And people would say, how do you predict social commerce? How do you predict this kind of stuff? And what's wild is map the history and the development of advertising on the internet, and you'll be able to predict everything that's happening on social. So when the internet started, it was largely a text-only platform. And the original issue with the internet was building inventory of connectivity. It was how many people are on the network. Because ultimately, that network effect is what drives the magic of the internet. And so everyone was just trying to get people onto the internet. And then once people were on the internet, there was enough inventory, enough people's attention to start advertising. And there was just very basic word ads on these word-driven web pages. And then it evolved into images, and it continued to emerge and develop. And as you see the internet develop, it was like, how do we even do commerce? How do we even do any of this? And it went from text, it went to photo, it went to video, it went to live. And then what came about is all of shopping in the world is happening on the internet. So how do you now track social media? You had the original Twitters. It's just text-based, short character. You then evolve into the Instagram and even Facebook early days was just like, Max is blank out with his friends, and it was likes and pokes and these very basic interactions. But the advertiser needed to build inventory. Zuckerberg didn't monetize Facebook until he had sufficient inventory of users on that. And so like the social networks are doing this exact march that's happening with the internet. So you go from text to image to video to live to commerce. It's exactly the track of what social media is doing. And so now TikTok Shop is coming about. You see all the others trying to race into commerce as well. Even LinkedIn is now trying to build video. So they're like one step behind, and their whole game is we need to build inventory to be able to advertise. And so I think you can track it very, very neatly together.
I think LinkedIn's definitely a big one to be looking out for on B2B if you're not already using it massively.
100%. What's interesting is let's put a 5-year prediction out there that you'll be able to do direct purchase in LinkedIn.
Ooh, for services.
Or referral directly to software. So if you want to sign up for Salesforce, a Salesforce influencer will create a video. You'll be able to click onto a link. It'll be monetizable, trackable, have a referral fee back to LinkedIn, potentially back to the original influencer. But there will be commerce ties into all of the major social platforms.
That'd be game changing.
Yeah, I mean, it's the next natural evolution. You have the audience there. You're already engaging with them. You want to click and be able to take action to complete a purchase and have that full funnel attribution.
I mean, you are kind of moving, the reason why I use the word services there, because you have this view my services on LinkedIn, you really have that piece, but you don't necessarily have the ability to then go
the
book it or pay for it.
The connectivity is missing.
Love that. CPM or ROAS, moving from that to full funnel, that's something that we want to discuss. There's this idea that influencer marketing was defined by impressions, CPMs, or ROAS, but later empowering clients to be able to be much more sophisticated than that. I'd like to unpack that shift, and in particular a shift that empowers these full funnel strategies that serve both brand and performance objectives. I'd like to touch on a bit how partners like ThisThat help you measure both sales and brand to make influencer marketing more strategic. I'd like to also explore how to get full funnel, multi-objective approach right. But starting off, why full funnel? Why makes this the moment to go full funnel? Or has it always been full funnel and people haven't necessarily caught up to that? And how are you helping brands design, run, and measure full funnel campaigns and programs?
It's interesting. I'll draw back on something you said, which was essentially the Pareto effect, which is saying X% of my marketing dollars are having an outsized impact. And there's like a famous advertising quote that says, I waste 50% of my advertising budget, but I can't tell you which half, you know? And I think when we talk about full funnel and measurement, there's never been a lack of want to have it. It's been a lack of ability to deliver on that measurement and instrumentation. And so I think marketers are always wanting as much data and to understand as much about where their dollars are spent. But there is a very real trend in brands now leaning more into shopper marketing, leaning into retail media, and putting dollars to use more down funnel. And so I think what we're seeing is there's been shopper marketing and retail media as a discipline, and then there's been kind of awareness and brand as a discipline. And those disciplines are merging. And that's what's bringing it to the middle. And I think we're getting pulled top funnel downward to the middle, and we're getting pulled bottom of funnel upward. Because realistically, if you're working with a creator, and this is where I talk about this concept of hybrid creators who are really savvy at driving sales, but also have large audiences. And you know, traditionally when you had a celebrity, there was very little call to action. There was very little tie to direct sales. It was really a brand awareness play. It was less driving sales. I think there's so many creators out there now that their entire audience is built on discovering products anyway. And so there's very natural like marriage.
LGK, for instance.
Yeah, and I think about like MKBHD. His whole channel on YouTube is created by product review and smartphones and laptops and cameras. And there's a very natural marriage between consuming and learning about products at the same time. And I think also with macroeconomic pressure, more and more the C-suite is asking marketing to focus on what drives revenue more immediately and directly. And so those dollars were shifting out of awareness dollars into retail media dollars or just sales programs. And so by being able to capture both outcomes at once, you keep the dollars all kind of in one budget, but you can tweak the outcomes and move them up and down funnel based on your goal. And it's similar. So like when a product first launches, I would say 80% of the dollars should be all awareness and just let me get the word out. But then as a product matures, you don't need to learn about Coke. You don't need to learn about, a MacBook Pro. It should be driving you toward, let's get you through the funnel and to converting. And so I think a lot of the instrumentation, a lot of the way the creator economy is developing is allowing you to tune outcomes and drive that measurement in a really interesting way.
Spoke about how they come together. I think a big ultimate driver of all the metrics that we look at to try and understand what is the North Star metric comes to what's in the boardroom.
100%. Yeah.
Like
What are
when
the
you're in
goals of the
that
organization?
meeting, what is the marketing section? Do you think there's an evolution of that marketing section speaking more full funnel? Is it still just ROI? Is it still just performance based, or how are you seeing evolutions there?
I mean, we work with some of the biggest retailers in the world, and they've gone so far as to merge their entire awareness team and bottom of funnel team. And it's all centralized in one organization. And then based on the goals, like you said, at the boardroom, they then can tweak their budgets and outcomes without having to go your cost center, this cost center. They're just shifting outcome and then deploying dollars around those types of outcomes. And I think ultimately allows them to be more dynamic in attacking any given moment. So again, macroeconomic pressure or something happens, they need to drive sales, they just hire a different type of creator. They take a slightly different approach, and then they drive tons of sales, versus they need to do brand repair or product launch or any kind of that traditional awareness and brand lift side. They can use those dollars accordingly. And so I see more and more that marketing teams are bringing together what was traditional awareness and influencer together with shopper and retail media.
And how is it working for them? Like, how are they getting that right? Because there's still a lot of tension in the industry around those two worlds. It does very much feel like, no, this is the performance team, this is the brand team. How does it work when they get together?
Yeah, I think what we try to do at least is be super clear about the goals of what they're trying to do. And I think that's the tug and pull. If you're a pure brand CMO, and I would just say, like, being a pure brand CMO or a pure kind of like revenue driving, it's kind of fading away, and CMOs are being stretched and asked to do big brand awareness, the hype, the events, the big activations, but they also need to be incredibly savvy digital marketers who can drive provable revenue. We talk a lot about the average tenure of a CMO. If you're not driving provable ROI, it's often very, very hard to justify your existence. So one of the big pitches that I go out with is, let's run your brand awareness play, but I can also hook measurable links, and I can find creators who are kind of in this middle hybrid ground. So let's say, your CEO gives you $5 million to go out and drive awareness. We can actually drive sales while we're doing that. They never asked for that. And when they come back, if I can prove a 1-to-1 ROAS on your entire awareness budget, the CEO feels great, CFO feels great, because at least you paid for yourself in sales, 100% attributable and measurable, and often you can get higher returns of ROAS that are measurable, whereas before, there's all these questions of what did the dollars do? And I think that's part of the magic of what you all are doing also, is being able to instrument what has never been truly measurable, and not just in brand lift, but all these different aspects where you're able to customize different types of studies around different types of objectives to be able to have a CMO go back to their CEO, their CFO, their board, and very clearly demonstrate with data that they've moved the needle in whatever way the board wanted to or the CMO wanted to.
I love that. It always comes down to that goal, and that's how you structure that at the beginning. And with that goal come hypotheses, come desires to drive change, and be able to design studies to facilitate that, to help them improve or improve even further as well, is definitely something that is very exciting to be able to see big impacts off the back of that. This leans quite neatly into part 3, making influencer more predictable, strategic, and outcome-driven. Later doesn't just help marketers create high-performing social content, collaborate with creators to reach new audiences and drive engagement. Later helps marketers generate predictable ROI as well. I want to talk about making influence more predictable, strategic, and outcome-driven. How did you bring the different components of Later, Maverick, Mavely together to one unified system? And how does this help Later make influence marketing more predictable, strategic, and outcome-driven? And within that, if you could touch on how partners like ThisThat or any other partners help bring the picture together as well to measure both brand, design tests, and optimize for growth.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think when you start out doing anything, right, it's completely unpredictable. And I think it's only through iteration, through amassing large bodies of experience and understanding of kind of what works and what doesn't work, that you start to understand the thematic trends. And I think AI and some algorithms and other things have helped us. But I come back to this thesis that we need to understand what works on social. So, 300 million posts worth of data using Google Vision to break down all of the content and then run it through AI algorithms to understand what works on social. We've done 3 million influencer activations across every type of vertical, all types of brands, all types of influencers, large, small, niche audiences, larger audiences. And I think that's where the predictable piece, if I think about trying to predict anything, if I were to say the average mile time of a US runner is X within plus or minus, but then you say, okay, all of these runners are, there's an interplay of them, it's complexity, what about the weather, what about the wind? Now what if I threw them on dirt or grass? Or if I change all these variables, how does that now shift when it's a controlled environment and it's this very like narrow set of constraints? Yeah, it's predictable. The reality of creator economy is it's, trying to measure every sport in every circumstance all at the same time, from the amateur level to the Olympics. And I think that doesn't happen without a lot of data to understand what works. And so what's really cool about what we're doing now is the old world was just, let me get you a celebrity. This is their approximate rate. We think it'll work, and it's low instrumentation. Today, when a client comes, I can guarantee them, hey, we're going to get you 5x ROAS on these exact dollars. And then, we drive those sales, and we can go back on the back end. We instrument, we have influencers who we know their exact SKU level sales. We know their performance. We know their audience. We have tight relationships with them. We know their brand safe. And so it takes a lot of those variables and constraints out. It's like controlling the weather, controlling the surface, controlling the dynamics. It's like putting lane lines, everything is trying to confine and be able to predict these outcomes and control the situation.
Very sophisticated, and all that data definitely is instrumental to making that come to life. I wonder, because something you touched on earlier was that two-way interaction. Mm-hmm. That can spark a whole flywheel that goes even well beyond that. Have you guys got anything that tries to capture that ripple effect? Because it can go way beyond. We might only pick up on that 5x ROAS, but it might actually be 50x, might even be more in the longer term.
Yeah, it's interesting. We talk a lot about all the different halo impacts, and I think, in some of the discussions that we've had, that magic of the instrumentation that you have, like, we're looking at micro level transactions through like highly measurable, and I think being able to leverage the tools and resources you have to then say, hey, we have hypothesis X that this campaign is leading to this bigger, broader outcome, or we want to test and understand, are there halo impacts that we don't fully understand, and then have data-driven, defensible results to be able to go back and convince our leadership of what's happening. And then I think it also, testing some of those initial hypotheses with the work you all are doing can lead you to have then a secondary, more focused test. So if you go out and you say, hey, what are the broad impacts? And you see, okay, we see these 5 things happening. Now let's go have individual sub-hypotheses on these 5 to better understand these halo impacts. What I think is cool consequence of that particular piece, the marketing industry is very sophisticated, right? A lot of these guys are going with mixed media modeling and very complex calculations to divvy up their media budgets. If we can test the hypotheses of these impacts, for creator, for instance, if I were to just say notionally, what is more effective, a piece of creator content or a random piece of display advertising? I think almost all of the world would say a good piece of creator content. But why? Like, oh, it's trust, it's like affinity, it's authenticity, it's all these like completely intangible words that don't. And so when all this goes into a mixed media model, they say one view, cost per view, cost per view. And what I think is amazing about what you all could do is say, let's work together to understand all the other kind of halo impacts of the brand lift piece, brand love, follow on sales, whether it's corresponding adjacencies to other product sales within the portfolio. On a creator, do you buy one product? Do you buy 5 products? The display, you might get hooked for the one product, but maybe you don't buy the other 4. And so there's all these different threads that you can pull. And what I want to get to is being able to give creator the true value it's due. And I don't want to go out there and just say a view is a view, a view. And I want to, because I know the power of creator economy and creator content, but sometimes it's very hard to just get people past this mindset of CPM, everything's equal, because it's not. It's simply not. A view is not a view across every channel, across every content type.
I echo that exact feeling. And then, at the same time, we live in a world where people do need to operate at scale, and they need to have those the MMM type models. We not long ago came out with a benchmark report where we showed the benchmarks across the full funnel in the influence marketing industry compared to other channels. When we go out and ask for the ad recall question in our surveys, we don't just ask, do you recall seeing ads for influence? We ask, where do you recall seeing ads for this campaign? And within that, capture exposure to other channels as well. And I've been able to prove how influence marketing is not just more effective at the top funnel or the mid funnel, but quite literally every part of the whole funnel. And that's worked tremendously for many, many people. But the true power that we see is well beyond that. The way in which, so we have over 5 million opinions directly from influencer communities in the way in which we've been doing brand lift. And our surveys, we don't just ask 1 to 3 or 4 questions, we ask 15 questions, and every respondent answers all of them, which means we can cut and slice the data in really interesting ways. So we've unpicked what gets someone to move from not being aware to becoming aware, what moves them from, or what drives them from awareness to considering, from considering to taking action, from taking action to advocacy. And there's something quite unique that makes influencer marketing really successful. It's what given us the conviction around this ripple effect in the community era, which is the way in which they move someone from becoming aware to considering is all around relevance. Now, people just throw that word out. We have an approach to measuring that. We ask 2 separate questions. One is, what do you associate most with this brand? Be the core brand identities. And then we'll ask a very similar question, same options, but the question is different. The question will ask, what do you care about most? What's most important to you? So now we'll have the consumer priorities, brand associations, and if they align, it's relevant to them. So that would be the strongest indicator of moving something from mere awareness to now I'm in market thinking about buying this product. And then moving from considering to actually taking action, it's about persuasion. Influencers are incredibly persuasive. They know what language to use with their audiences, right? It's their community. And so we'll be testing out different messages that anchor specific associations that they will have used in their work or have been briefed to use in their work. But we don't just test the messaging. What we look to understand is how agreeable are those messages. So do the audiences now agree with what they say? Do they believe in what they say? And does that make them love the brand even more? And so the way in which they persuade people is they make them agree with a certain association that is relevant to them, and they make them fall in love with the brand through that. That is how they get them to buy. And so if they get them to buy by making something relevant, by making them agree and believe and love, you are on path to building a champion, to building an aligned advocate. And that is really sparking that ripple effect. And it's really, really exciting to be able to empower brilliant people that have seen this before, but not really had the tools to articulate this and to drive change to get more dollars into this space. And so I'm really, really excited to bring those worlds a little bit better together.
Yeah, I love that. It's very well said on that impact of how creators are able to move people through the funnel. And it's interesting. I just think, there's a few different dynamics. It's the kind of resonance of maybe topical interest or story relevance between a creator and an audience. I think there's this curation of like, I'm in the story, I understand their content, it resonates deeply with me. There is one thing that's interesting, and I think it's at the core of all of this, which is brands have a really hard time moving people to a position just because they're not a human. Like people don't view companies as humans. They don't, all of the positives of human connection, of all those emotions, the brain activity that happens when you're like, I'm sitting across from Max and I can like see him looking at me, and it's like this human chemistry thing. If I'm sitting across from Adobe, this amorphous but very useful company, there's like, I don't feel connected to you as a human. When I see you on the street, I'm not gonna walk up to Adobe and like give you a hug and say hello and remember our experience sitting on a boat. And I might have a version of that, but it's not the human connection. And I think that is one of the magical things about the creators is not only is it like hyper relevance for what I generally like and what I like to be entertained by or the stories I like to hear, but there's that human connection. And what's amazing to me is I think there's a lot of translation into just like management life and business life. When you're just like a Zoom box, there's almost like a dehumanization of some of this. And and it's funny, the first time colleagues like meet in person and they go out and have dinner, when you message that person, the action they take, the intent they have behind your, anytime you message me now that I've met you multiple times, I'm gonna respond to that instantly. You text me, I'm gonna pick up the phone, and it's basis in that like the human to human connection. And it's interesting because if Adobe sends me a marketing email, it's going straight to the trash. And I love Adobe. And so it's really interesting. And I think there's this, I don't think brands in and of themselves can replicate that because they are not human. And so I think by leveraging that human to human connection that we want and we all crave and need, and we want that sense of belonging, we want to explore new things together. And I do think that's the magic of creator, and that's gonna bleed over into every type of marketing. And I'm so convicted. I don't think influencer is just like a thing or a specific channel. It's going to be woven into everything. Because at the end of the day, humans are the best advocates for products. They're the best connectors of other humans. And at the end of the day, I think that's really going to win over.
I find that fascinating. We have we actually at ThisThat see the word brand and community as interchangeable. And so but the lens at which we're looking at this is the value of the brand. So it's funny how you say when you think of Adobe, you wouldn't necessarily want to go hug it. The way in which we look at community for a brand and trying to understand the value of that brand through that is we look at three different components. One is fairly simply just the population. How many people are aware of your brand? So that'll be the ultimate size of your community. The second one would be intent. How likely are they to take action, the action that is valuable to that brand, like buying a product or using an app or whatever that business model might be. And then the third one is the strength of that community. And with the strength, we're looking at multiple things, but trying to just sort of simplify it somewhat. You can imagine a quadrant where on one axis it's how much are they advocating you, and the other one, how aligned are they with you. If they're misaligned and advocating, that's not good, that's a misfit. If they are aligned and everything's relevant to them and they're advocating, you're likely going to expand that audience and that community is going to grow. And if you get all of those three in the right way, you could be looking at population, number of people aware, intent. Now you can actually from that predict the number of actions that would take place, so how many people are going to buy. And then when you've got that strength component, you can actually turn that into more of like you can look at like a decay or like a time series and get a sense as to how many actions are going to happen today, tomorrow, next week, next month, and into the future. And I think there's an opportunity within that to relook at how you could actually measure the valuation of a brand off the back of that too. But I also fully agree with what you're saying on that, this human connection. The more you can get that into a brand, I mean, you see that with like Duolingo, for instance, like having those different mascots, bringing your brand to life, or even just like more like people from a company coming out on LinkedIn as well, like being top voices. That it builds connection. It makes that brand more of a thing. Fully agree.
100%. And it's interesting because communities, in my mind, are built by really passionate humans. And it's the human connection side, whether they're paid creators or they're just advocates. And some of the biggest examples that I think about, so like Notion has this fanatical user base, and they like bring people into the Notion ecosystem and they love it. And it's just this multiplier, like an exponential effect of, you know, one person brings in 10, bring in 100, bring in 1,000. And it's, I think a lot of brands are really sad. I think about Salesforce and their trailblazers and all the admins and the developers. They've created this community, the ecosystem, and this love for the brand. And it's now become like this interesting representation of the brand and the community is their fanatical user base, that community. And I think that extends into the way that they now represent the brand. And that Trailblazer community is a massive part of what they showcase at things like Dreamforce and other events. And when they bring people, they lean on them because they're such strong brand advocates. And so I do think it comes down to really motivated, inspired humans who want to help people discover something that they've found.
It's a much more fun way to exist.
Oh, 100%. I love to discover products from passionate, motivated people. And I think it's the purity of intent also from a super fan. They have no other ulterior motive other than to share their energy and their love for a product. And I think that's where we have some work to do in the paid creator space. Is the better that we can manage like pure motivation along with branded advertising. You know, it's very clear to see when a creator doesn't love a product. And I think it's our job as advertisers in this space is to match folks where it's a very natural fit. It was really interesting. I was at an event and it was Ludacris was there and he was talking about brand deals that he's done. And he's like, and they asked him a question. I was like, how do you manage brand deals, who you'll represent or not? And he's like, it's actually easy. I just work with all the brands of the things I've used for the last 20 years and I never have to fake it. He's like, I rep peanut butter. And if you know me, I had peanut butter every single day of my life forever. And so when I got approached by Jif to go rep peanut butter, it was the most straightforward thing. He's like, I've driven a Mercedes and it's been my aspirational vehicle since I was 16 years old. And I go and I blast that out to the world. And he's like, and that first car, that Mercedes I had, what insurance? I had State Farm insurance. And now he's got a brand deal with State Farm. And I think that's where we need to do a better job of mapping, you know, creators to very natural things where, you know, if you come out and you tell me like, I really like, you know, this particular thing and it's so clear it's not you, it's just not going to resonate deeply. And I think we can take a data-driven approach to that, or we can just take a logical, sensical approach. And I think the marrying of the two reinforced by data and then the impact on the community of both of those is kind of where we both can help uplift the industry and make a dent. 1 + 1 = 3.
I've got a mathematics degree, but I very much believe in 1 + 1 = 3. I see that as when you've got different schools of thoughts that come together, you can expand the opportunity of thinking and expand what can be done. I mean, we're seeing that even just with LLMs creating all these new different ways of bringing things together, but more specifically brand and performance. When you see those two things come together, you can really have outsized returns. But all too often it does get split into this brand world, this performance world. Or while we do know those outsized returns exist when they are in combination. I'd love it if you could give us some examples of the most powerful outcomes that you've ever seen when brand and performance work together. And how, I'd love to know your thoughts around how we can make, or how we can enable the industry to make this a more standardized approach, which definitely bleeds into that sort of full funnel approach. How can we help the industry make this a standard?
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of different ways to approach this kind of multi-outcome or full funnel. I think at the end of the day, understanding again what creators are great at driving sales, who's great at driving awareness, being able to fully instrument. It's kind of interesting, and I liken it to other parts of science where it's like things are happening, but we're not measuring the secondary or tertiary impacts of certain things happening. And when we're able to unpack those things, we have a more complete understanding, and we're also able to harness better. It's really interesting. Like I think, you know, even this is, you know, kind of funny parallel, but when we were first trying to understand Earth and like the sun, it's like very, very basic things like, oh, cool, it's warm. And then you start to learn about radiation. You start to learn about all these different dynamics and like ozone. And every little thing that we unpacked and we learned about the scientific impact, the more we're able to harness. And now you think about crazy things like we have like tidal power and geothermal and like all these different aspects that were never possible. And like all these impacts and these offshoot measurements allow us to control and unlock new potential. And so I think in the creator economy, it was like, we know it can do this one thing. And then it was like, hey, it's also doing this other thing. Let's not measure it. Let's understand it. Let's create technology to harness the power of it. It's like, rather than just be our light source, let it be our heat source. Let it be our energy source. Let it, be more than just this one-dimensional thing. And so I think for me, the creator economy started as one very specific thing. And so I think the magic of what you're doing too is trying to instrument and measure all of these hidden blind spots. And then it's up to us to then take action to create mechanisms to get value for brands from all these different offshoots and to educate the brands. So like again, this brand versus bottom of funnel thing, if brands only think creators are awareness and they're only trying to drive that one outcome, it's like the sun equals light. And so like when I look at the sun, I get light. And now we have this new educated thing that's like sun equals heat, sun equals radiation, sun equals power, like all these other things. And now we need to be able to and educate brands on saying, okay, well, you need both light and heat and energy. So let's sort this thing out for you together. And when you go build a house, what if you could just build something that navigates all of them at once? A solar energy, solar heating, and we can flow the light through your entire home. And those dollars that you would spend on your home, we can now minimize and create a much more enjoyable experience. And by the way, we're trying to save the planet at the same time. So I think that maybe it's a weird analogy, but I just think it's this discovery of new angles and harnessing the power and refining how brands think about what are, traditionally myopic, one-dimensional kind of things.
I like how you use the sun as an analogy, because from a consumer standpoint, they've got no clue. It's just an ad, or it's always the same. There's another post from a creator. They wouldn't know, oh, this is brand, or this is performance, or it's both. It is just the sun. They feel it's part of their everyday life. But then understanding the different components allows you to, like you said, understand, okay, we want to structure it this way. If this is the goal, let's focus on these elements, bring these bits together, and minimize cost, maximize outcomes. Analogies are great. Big fan of that.
Yeah, I think it comes down to we need to mature almost as, scientists of the space, and it gets more complicated. It's very easy to walk outside and understand that light exists from the sun. It's very easy to understand the heat, but all these different offshoots.
Yeah.
Beyond the obvious lies immense opportunity. And in the creator economy, beyond the obvious lies all this hidden potential. And I think it's people like you, it's people like us, bringing all of these different kind of hidden opportunities to bear and creating the science, creating the language, creating the way to think about it and understand it and harness its power.
It's a perfect way of wrapping up the outsized results when you bring those worlds together. Are you ready for the rapid fire this or that questions?
Let's do it.
Feel free to give me one-word answers, full sentence answers, or tell me that it's neither or it's both.
Sure.
Conversion or community?
I'm going to say community.
Community strategy or media plan?
Say community strategy.
Campaign or program?
It's got to be a program.
Creator-led brand or brand-led creator?
I'm going to pick hybrid, somewhere in the middle of that. But both can exist contextually. But yeah, I think brand and creator working together is the right harmony.
I agree. Reach or relevance?
Relevance for sure.
Sales or advocacy?
Advocacy builds sales all day.
AI optimized or human curated?
This is a middle ground, but I think in the new world you have to have AI. The way I've stated the agency of the future is the most brilliant creative minds who are above the AI level of unique thinking and the humanity component, but AI for the trivial, the slow, the mechanical, so humans' full potential can be realized.
Insight or instinct?
Surprisingly, for a data-driven person, I think both can exist. I think in this space we have to have insight, we have to have data and measurement, but a lot of that starts from great instincts and being able to say, hey, there's something else going on with the sun. We should unpack that and measure that. I think a lot of great insight has come from instinct as the inception of measurement, which leads to insight.
I've got this, are you familiar with the 40-70 rule, the Colin Powell rule? You recommends to make decisions within the window. I mean, it's not necessarily always to be followed because he's made some terrible decisions, but he said you don't want to make a decision with less than 40% of the information, but you also don't want to make a decision with more than 70% of the information. If you make it with less than 40, it's a complete gamble. If you make it with more than 70, you've missed the opportunity. And the more times you make decisions in that window, the closer and closer you can get to that 40. And that is the instinct, and it's the insight that gives you close to that 70. And I always find that quite interesting, because just the pace at which we're evolving in this space and as a company, we don't always have all the information. We have to move. We just have to keep moving. And but when you iterate at that pace, you can move at every single day, and all the different tweaks. You move this way, then you move that way. That context of that doesn't work out, it builds that instinct. So instinct can be built. So definitely see both those two together.
100%. It's actually interesting. Prior to my ZoomInfo experience, I was at Daimler, and we were trying to encourage people to speed up the decision-making process, because very analytical German company, 300,000 people. And what was interesting is I got to fly around the world, and I was part of the decision-making squad, and we were evangelizing, how can we, in every meeting, ask what decision can we make? Can we get to an outcome on limited information? And we had this question we asked everyone, which was, when you're faced with a decision that needs to be made, would you rather someone make a decision today that is slightly misaligned or not exactly the decision you want, or no decision? Every culture, everyone, they all want the decision, even if it's not perfectly aligned, because it gives them clarity, it allows them to move forward, it gives them speed, and it kind of couples nicely with this. I think the 75% right plan, the 80% right plan, executed incredibly well, and given 100% energy all day, every day, is better than continually just seeking that 100% right plan, but never getting to the execution piece. And I think you're more likely to get to the 100% right answer by starting at 60% right, 65% of the information, and then you discover all along the way. And so I think it lines up very nicely with my philosophy about how you approach decision making, and then just doing, like, go out and try multiple things and learn through. We talk a lot about failure. I think about, rather than sit there and prepare for a marathon forever, let's just start kind of running. Let's get the journey, because we're never going to know exactly what's going to happen. We don't know exactly the conditions we're going to face. But let's be prepared, and as we go, let's adapt and overcome. And building a team in a company, I think the more you can build people who can adapt to any situation, the more you're going to be able to handle anything in front of you. And as a leader, the most amazingly inspiring thing is to have a team that no matter what you face, you're going to be able to overcome and think your way out or work your way out of that obstacle. I think I love to see that in teams and partnerships between, whether it's a brand and an agency or a provider, that ability to know, hey, no matter what we face in this relationship, we're going to be able to find a way around it. Versus this, like, hey, if it doesn't go all to plan, we're all going overboard and it's the end. And so I think you have to be adaptable for sure.
Got 3 more. You ready?
Let's go. I'll make this one shorter.
No, I love that, though. Next one's being first or being best?
Definitely being best. I like being first when possible, but I'd rather get to the right answer. Being best, by the way, implies that there's others there to do it with. It's way more fun to be a part of a community building something. I think, like, Creator is an amazing community. There's so many people that are trying to make this thing amazing. And even though some of us are competitive, there's this camaraderie that we're all riding on the outcome of Creator.
100%.
And it does unite us in very interesting ways. So I'd rather be part of a bigger cause, a bigger mission, trying to get something done, than just being solo, trying to bushwhack, to the outcome.
Something that people were saying a lot last year was, with a rising tide, all boats rise.
100%.
Or with
very
a tide,
fitting.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. ROAS or Robbie? And Robbie's return on brand investment, which is a thing that we're trying to make happen.
Yeah, no, I think I like Robbie. I also have that I kind of use this return on objective. And marketing is a weird discipline where...
How do you say that? RU?
I don't know. Yeah, RU, sure. But, sales is often very straightforward. You have dollars and cents. Marketing is a complex beast. It's a little art, a little science. You can be repairing brand, you can be building brand, you can be launching product, you can be driving sales, you can be, building community, there's so many different things that you can be trying to accomplish. And so I love this kind of concept of like return on objective, and it is return on brand investment. Because at the end of the day, all those dollars are coming in, and at the end of the day, what are they doing? And is it sufficing those objectives, those complex, multi-pronged objectives that the organization has? I think that's the cool power of marketing, by the way, too. It is a chameleon that can adapt to all these different kinds of situations, and from comms to PR to driving sales to informing product development to building community to inspiring new employees to join. It really is this kind of interesting representation of the totality of the company and helping move every surface area forward.
Brand lift or MMM? Remember who you sat next to?
I mean, I believe a lot in brand lift. I would say elevated instrumented brand lift.
Yes.
MMM I just find to be overly mechanical and not a true representation of what's going to ultimately drive outcomes. And when you try to over-engineer certain things, you can actually turn about and start making the wrong decisions because you're trying to grind pennies and over-index on some things, versus when you look at brand lift, it never doesn't drive great outcomes. It doesn't drive sales, customer engagement. So,
love that.
We'll see if my glasses got picked up on the microphone.
Scott, this has been a real pleasure. Thank you so very much.
Amazing. Yeah, thank you for having me. And it's a great conversation. Thank you.
Wicked.